Cheers, guys. Welcome back. And I'm excited today to bring this video to you guys because I mentioned in a recent video about how the US Navy SEALs use positive self-talk, robotic affirmations in order to take on the challenging tasks that they undergo, obviously not only in their training, but also in the field. And so what I found here today is an excerpt from this book written by Mark Devine, he was a Navy SEAL commander, and he oversaw various missions around the world, including in the Asia Pacific, Africa, Bahrain, Iraq, and then retired. He began a parallel journey into Zen meditation and Seido karate. And essentially, after his long spanning career of 20 years in the military, then went on to write. He's now New York Times bestselling author and all of this. So I'm going to go through some excerpts from one of his books called The Unbeatable Mind. And I've been doing a little bit of research on this topic. I've also seen that the Navy SEALs, they engage in guided meditations, they engage in hypnosis, they do a lot of trainings, visual as well as with the self-talk aspect, the affirmations aspect. But I'm going to read these excerpts from his book today to give you guys an idea, because obviously he was also, not only was he a commanding officer, but the military, the US Navy SEALs, they wanted him to, so after transitioning to the Navy Reserves, he launched SEAL Fit in 2007 to serve as an immersive academy to strengthen the caliber of SOF candidates entering the special operations pipeline. And the military contracted him to train these special units. So not only is he a best-selling author and all of this, but like the military, because of his abilities, because of his capabilities, sought him out to then train these units. And with that being said, guys, we're just going to get into this. I'm not going to go like super into the details. If you guys are curious about his history and stuff, you can look into that yourself. But I'm going to begin right here with this part where he talks about the witness, which is very interesting because we've been talking about, I've mentioned before a bunch of times on this channel, Eckhart Tolle talking about the observer being the witness. Vadim Zeland talks about the witness, the witnessing presence. And we're going to get into it right now. The cool thing about this is it's at a very practical level, obviously, because these trainings are being used to apply like in the Navy SEALs. Okay, so the witness. Have you ever been knee deep in an argument when you suddenly had the experience of separating from the dialogue and watching the absurdity of what you and the other person were doing? You may have broken out laughing as you instantaneously shifted from identifying with the thoughts and words spewing out of your mouth to what I call your witness. This is a very liberating moment. The ability to gain distance from your own thoughts allows you to separate yourself from them. Let me say that again a different way. The more you connect with your witness, the more you understand that you are not your thoughts. This separation creates space for positivity to flow in, releasing you from the shackles of natural negativity. Perhaps you've noticed that when we get stuck in our heads, we tend to slide into negativity. We judge, get emotionally attached to our opinions, are impressed with our brilliance, and tend to shut others out. In these moments, we make lousy teammates and tend to sabotage success. Negativity destroys performance in the short term and precludes success and happiness in the long term. Why is it so natural for us to be negative? It turns out, for survival's sake, our rational thinking mind is wired for it with a bias for negativity. We know this. We've been talking about this, right? This isn't some newfangled theory. Native American elders have long recognized this truth, saying that a wolf of fear resides in our minds, ready to pounce at the slightest danger. And there is this story, and I think he's about to go into it now, but this classic Native American story about the two wolves, right? And they talk about which wolf are you feeding, the wolf of fear or the wolf of courage? What we're doing now is bringing to life our facility to recognize that the witness is always there too. You have to slow down and take a step outside of the constant doing nature of modern life to connect with it, to open up space between our deep ingrained fear responses and patterns and our true authentic self. The Zen tradition talks about polishing the mirror to explain this phenomena. Imagine your ego mind to be like a mirror. Negativity, false stories, fear. These things cloud the mirror, making it difficult to see yourself and reality with accuracy. It's like that lens being distorted, that lens of reality. It's distorted, it's smudged, it's dirty, and it's cleaning up the lens. You're polishing, as you practice connecting with your witness, you're polishing your mirror and actively training your skill to see clearly. This is really cool. This is like what I was talking about with DJ the other day too. And what we've been talking about so many times. So you're getting in touch with the positive aspects of your ego instead of the negative. You're enacting a new phase of evolution toward your fullest human expression. It's so cool that he's using the exact same type of language that we've been using on the channel recently. Isn't that incredible? That when you really get to, people that know these truths, whether their background's in the Navy SEALs or they're a spiritual teacher or they're a metaphysicist or a quantum physicist, these people all have the same, they're all pointing towards the same things here. So away from the animalistic reactionary nature of our hardscrabble past, when you first begin to still your mind and acknowledge your witness, you will notice, maybe for the first time, how habitually you harbor negative, weak thoughts. Once you see this, you discover one of the powerful gifts of the witness. You now have a choice to change these thoughts immediately. You can also rely on your witness during conversation, during action, and detect a pattern of negative thoughts when they first start creeping in. The trick is to use awareness of negative thoughts as a stimulus to softly redirect the mind into the realm of positive thought and performance. SEALs are trained to be rock steady. And that's like when I talk about gently shift your attention, right? It's not, what you don't want to do is like beat yourself up about it. So enter into more negativity based on the negativity, right? That's not what we want to do. We want to gently shift. As he says here, use the awareness as a stimulus to softly redirect the mind into the realm of positive thought and performance. So SEALs are trained to be rock steady, but I'm no stranger to the twin demons of negative thoughts and feelings. When I checked into SEALs Buds Class 170, my nerves were sizzling. I could feel the adrenaline pulse through my arteries. The magnitude of the instructors flared. They had a superhuman quality, and the students were like freaked out carpenter ants frantically trying not to be crushed. My class had 180 trainees, and the stream of negative chatter in their minds was expressed in the anxiety riddling their faces. I was picking up a lot of it myself. I sensed the tension in my stomach as fear and dread settled into the class. I began to talk to myself. What's up? I've trained hard. I've made it this far. Many have gone before me and made it, and if they did it, so can I. Quitting is not an option. They'll have to kill me to get me to quit. As I said those words to myself, I felt the fear melt away and the firepower of courage replace it. I had applied the simple technique of being a witness to the flow and content of my thoughts and feelings. And then, when negative thoughts began to seep in, I took action to redirect. I intentionally tuned my attention to a positive frequency. Right? These are phrases. I've trained hard. I've made it this far. If they did it, I can do it too, right? What are these? These are affirmations. You affirm to yourself to get you onto this new frequency that he's talking about here. So starving fear, feeding courage. As I said earlier, negativity erodes performance. So it's imperative to retrain the underlying pattern and maneuver from witnessing negative thoughts to starving those thoughts into oblivion. And that's what it's about. It's about starving. It's about removing the attention. It's not about fighting it. It's not about battling with it. Then start in with the positive, courage-building thoughts. Or as the Native Americans might say, with a vivid metaphorical punch, you need to starve the fear wolf and feed the courage wolf. This is the specific process I use and have taught through my various training programs. 1, witness negativity. 2, interdict or stop the negative thoughts with a power statement. 3, redirect your mind with self-talk and imagery to something positive and productive to your current goal. 4, maintain your new mental state with a jingle or mantra. And again, he's using the word jingle or mantra, but it's an affirmation with an affirmation. Interdiction power statements are words that shock your monkey mind back into control. Words like no or stop work well. Though I prefer using positive power statements, ones that have a little more blast to them, such as I've got this, piece of cake, step it up, Mark, or my favorite, feed the courage wolf. You will want to develop a power statement, one with some shock force to it that resonates with you. Then practice using it daily. That's what we've been talking about here on the channel. You pick ones that resonate with you. You pick ones for what you're currently working on and practice using it daily. Practicing power statements until they become second nature will over time place the interdiction process on, I think it's interdiction, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, on autopilot. Juiced up power statements explode negative mental chatter and allow your mind to still itself and await its next set of instructions. Power statements temporarily interdict negative thoughts, but don't ensure they will stay away forever. Negativity will likely return unless you redirect your mind to a new positive thought pattern. That's what we do when we do this with the repetition. Essentially, you must have a contingency plan to prevent backslide. I see this with trainees all the time. When I note a student going negative, my staff and I will do an interdiction for her. Which wolf are you feeding, Joe? Feed the courage wolf. It temporarily stops the student in his or her tracks, and they note the negative state and degradation of performance caused by it. The student has a moment of presence and choice for a new direction, a positive one. But if they lack a solid redirect strategy, they will revert back to the negative rut. That's what we're doing here. These are redirection strategies. The secret for a successful redirect is to inject a new positive thought pattern into your still mind that aligns with your immediate goal. You may infuse these new thoughts with positive energy and feelings. You will keep your mind focused on the new internal dialogue, imagery, and feelings until you are well into positive terrain. What I'm referring to is creating using a jingle or mantra or affirmation. A jingle is a song, rhyme, or saying that is positively charged and has a strong meaning to you. The jingle is like background music that keeps negativity at bay by engaging your conscious mind in its positive words, images, and feelings. I must reiterate that these coded messages must be charged with meaning beyond their simple words. For example, every day in every way I'm getting better and better, coined by Emile Coué. This man was 100 years before his time and was able to heal his patients by having them change negative thinking and emotional states. They changed to positive by saying to believing that one statement. He says, I use it myself along with a couple others. With practice, your jingle will run in the background of your mind with little or no prodding. It won't prevent you from using your mind from problem solving. Rather, it's like a gatekeeper for your witness, ever present to ward off negativity. Your mind remains under control and unfettered by thoughts or beliefs that sap your energy and degrade your performance. Typically, the entire 4-step process is done in an instant. As an example, sometimes during my SEAL Fit daily training with my team, I find it necessary to shout a verbal interdiction followed by a redirect instructions. When I witness the whole team suffering from a defeatist attitude, hoo-yah, team, we got this. Focus on the next round. See it happening. Let's crush this. Instructions to this effect shock the team out of their slump and get them focused on a new positive direction. Combined with regular meditative work, you should experience immediate results with this powerful mental control process. However, please don't be discouraged if you feel like it's taking too much time for things to shift for you. Like the practice of silence, you are making progress just by paying attention to this vital skill. My recommendation is to settle into your silence practice for a few weeks and implement the 4-step process. Witness, interdict, redirect, and maintain to set the stage for mental toughness. Okay, cool. So here he's talking about the 3 Ps and your one thing. And he's going more into your general purpose here. So he's saying, what am I passionate about? How can I do more of that? These are just general principles, I think, that are more general for life. This book is written for people, not necessarily Navy SEALs only. So he's using examples of what he would do training the Navy SEALs, but he's also saying how it applies to other aspects of your life. So 2, what do I value and how can I develop these principles so they define my character for the rest of my life? And that's what I've been talking about recently too. Defining your values, making a list of your values, and that way you're setting up your own guiding principles that are in accordance with those values. So you're not questioning so much, you're able to make better decisions by doing that. 3, what is my purpose? Who am I? What am I here for? What is the one thing that I'm supposed to accomplish in my life? And what does that mean for me right now? That is, what is today's one thing connected to my big thing? 4, how do I take my one thing and activate it in the world? So I'm going to continue on here. I have a couple more spots that I wanted to go over here. So he's talking about emotional resiliency. Resiliency means you can bounce back quickly from any setback, whether physical, mental, or emotional. Like mental toughness, resiliency, be it physical, mental, or emotional, is a skill that can be trained. But of the 3, emotional resiliency is the most challenging to take on. The process is similar to the witness process for mental control described earlier. It's simple in concept, but there's nothing easy about it. As we very well may know, emotional resiliency takes patience and courage to develop, but here's how to do it. So here we have this process here. 1, first, witness the negative emotional reaction, then interdict it with a power statement that stops it in its track. Then observe the root emotion beneath it. 2, lean into that root emotion to experience it fully, ensuring that you are avoiding denial or transference. Okay. 3, transmute the negative emotional energy to its positive correlate. For example, the emotional energy of fear can be focused into courage, anger becomes commitment, jealousy is interdicted and transformed into appreciation. And the most devastating emotion, shame, can become pride, while despair becomes surrender. Imagine the possibilities when you can interdict all these negative emotional responses and channel their energy into their positive correlate. 4, engage the new emotion with imagery and self-talk, affirmations, that support it and blocks the old emotion from re-emerging. Then get moving again by taking action. Of course, that action may require that you take your eyes off yourself and put them on a teammate. The positive momentum you develop will take you to a new, more productive and emotionally balanced level. So these things that he's talking about, these things are, they are spoken about in these various mystical practices, wisdom teachings. Hermeticism, they talk about this as well. And in all of these ancient teachings, in Taoism and all these things, this transmutation, that essentially is alchemy. Transmuting these negative emotions into a correlating emotion which is serving us. And again, like he says here, it's much easier. It's a practice. It's not going to be easy. And so when we get triggered, when we fall into these emotional states, we don't want to beat ourselves up. We want to use that gentle shift in attention to bring our attention back to, okay, how can we frame this as being positive? And one interesting thing he said here, which is interesting and correlates to things Frederick Dodson talks about, is like, how much power do you have when you have that experience, and Napoleon Hill talks about this too, where you really truly believe that every negative, every opposite, every obstacle and challenge has within it the seed of an equivalent benefit. So whatever it is, that's talking about transmuting despair into surrender. So you've had this unfortunate circumstance happen, but it's the true mastery is like that terrible thing happens, objectively it looks terrible, and you immediately kind of just shift into like, okay, well, where do I go from here? In what way is this serving me? That's what Frederick Dodson talks about, right? So he's going to give an example here. So let me walk through a personal example. During Operation Iraqi Freedom, I was quoted in a newspaper article about some recent losses that had a provocative title about the SEALs. I'd commented on the fact that, in my opinion, the SEALs were employed to do conventional unit jobs in broad daylight, in contradiction to our doctrine of being the silent warriors who operated at night and were gone before the enemy knew that we hit them. The author of the article, without my approval, used my reserve officer rank in the story, making it look like a semi-official statement. I got called on the carpet quickly by a SEAL captain who read me the riot act. As I stood tall in front of this man who seemed to lack emotional control himself, I felt my anger rising. My instinctual response was to fight back by lashing out, but that would have just made things worse. In the military, if you're getting dressed down like that, you shut up and take it, whether you think the superior in rank is right or not. Shouting back at him would have been a serious breach of military protocol and discipline. Thankfully, because I had trained to connect with my witness and not my reactionary mind and emotions, I could gain a little distance and observe myself reacting in the moment. I instantly realized that I hadn't been in a situation like this for a long time. It could be a powerful learning opportunity. I was able to interdict my emotional response with a self-given command to stop, and then began to observe my inner emotional state without losing control, all while I was getting railed. Beneath the anger I recognized was a fear of the repercussions and damage to my reputation. What if I got kicked off the team? What if the people I respected heard this version of events and lost respect for me? Though my body was reacting with anger, I recognized the root emotion as a fear of loss. I also saw that I had an issue with authority. This issue partly fueled my fearful reaction. I had a chip on my shoulder about people who I perceived as resting on their rank. To put it bluntly, I felt a lack of trust in this guy. I thought he lacked honesty in his treatment of me. He was towing the party line and in the process of doing a good job posturing, effectively, I might add. I feared that my entire career would go down the drain because of this misstep. Fortunately, because I was able to connect with my witnessing self and gain that critical distance from my thinking and feeling self, I could examine my reaction, kick its tires, and decide that though the fear of loss I felt was real, I was blowing it out of proportion and it was not a response that would serve me well. All this happened while the captain raged about how bad a SEAL I was. I made a conscious decision to convert the fear of his authority figure and fear of potential loss into a forceful resolution to maintain my positive and professional attitude toward him. After all, he was just doing his job, working with the tools that had supported him well in the system. I began to envision myself as a well-respected officer, admired for not being afraid to speak his mind and for doing the right thing regardless of the consequences. As you probably predicted, I got through the incident without too much blood loss, and I was able to refine my emotional resiliency toolkit. As it turned out, many SEALs and other vets thanked me for what I said in the article because they agreed with me in principle. They were upset about the same things and felt the issues needed to be aired so a dialogue could be had. They appreciated the courage I showed to speak out honestly. Ultimately, my reputation was enhanced by the incident with those who mattered to me most. Okay, cool. So he's going into more things about emotional resiliency, but I'm going to go now next into this last part here. So it's very, very interesting because he's referring to the work of Dr. Hawkins, Dr. David Hawkins, who I've referred to in many recent videos, in which he talks about the scale of consciousness. And, so he's going into these right here. And so I'm going to read this excerpt. So Dr. Hawkins shows that when we act below the level of courage, we are in negative territory. Our goal is to condition ourselves to feed the courage wolf so we remain at or above the level of courage. Ideally, we are energetically aligned with optimism, acceptance, gratitude, and love. Dr. Hawkins' positivity stages, which will strengthen performance and develop your consciousness, shown in progression from moderate to highest positive energy are courage, trust, optimism, forgiveness, acceptance, reverence, love, joy, serenity, peace, bliss. Negative attitudes attract negative energy and weaken the mind and body, degrading performance and life in general. Furthermore, if allowed to dominate, these energies will interrupt growth and lead to stagnation at lower levels of consciousness. The relentless drumbeat of negativity from network news, negative self-talk, or gossip exacerbates this problem. And I love that he's touching on these, man, because he's really, it's so fascinating to me that what he's discussing in this book is pretty much like verbatim going over like ideas that we've been talking about on the channel recently. You'll be talking about how paying attention to negative media, negative inputs is going to create a negative output. You're paying attention to gossip. You're paying attention to these low levels of consciousness, that victim state of consciousness. What do you expect? You are going to be a reflection of the dwelling state that you are in. And that is intertwined with your self-talk. It's intertwined with your, that imagery that you're entertaining, what you are aware of, where you're placing your attention. So Hawkins' negativity stages show from low to lowest are pride, scorn, anger, hate, desire, craving, anxiety, grief, regret, apathy, despair, guilt, blame, shame, and humiliation. Changing the negative belief and dialogue to a positive one will dramatically impact performance, personally and with your team. Using the witness process, you now have a powerful tool for maintaining positivity. Identify the space between a thought or emotion and the reaction. As you witness negativity, interdict it. In other words, cancel the negative thought patterns and redirect the mind toward one of the positive patterns noted above. Interdiction is done with a power statement that will interrupt the negative thoughts and energy. Once the negative thought pattern has been successfully interdicted, it is maintained with your mantra, such as mine, which is looking good, feeling good, ought to be in Hollywood. Okay, so next he's going into like building the team leadership and stuff. But yeah, guys, I wanted to kind of cover this, and there's another one I can go into in another video. I can cover their the visualizations that they use in SEAL training, and let me know if that would be valuable, if you guys would enjoy that as well. I wanted to cover this from the self-talk and affirming perspective, and just show that no matter what you're doing, obviously, we've talked about this too, the athletes use this, the Navy SEALs are using it. So many people are using this stuff, and it's one of those things where it's like, you could have, affirmations and things are really popular right now in this kind of spiritual area on YouTube, but they're also popular in self-development because they work. They're practical. They practically can work for you. And a friend of mine, Tim Grimes, and I interviewed him, best-selling author on stress management and talking about these concepts as well. He talks about a lot of the time on YouTube, on social media, people are coming at this stuff from a very spiritual perspective, the law, right? And all this stuff. And that's all well and good. And I actually do enjoy that. And he makes mention that he enjoys that as well. But there's also a way to talk about this stuff from a purely kind of psychology perspective, which a lot of the times I feel like a lot of the spiritual language, to agree with Tim's point, is a little bit overkill. Like, we don't really need to do that so much. And if we're doing this with a very practical intention in mind, you notice that Mark Devine here, this SEALs officer, speaks about it in a very practical language, in a very psychology-based language, because it's probably much more acceptable to his audience, right? And same with Maxwell Maltz, the author of Psycho-Cybernetics. And Emil Coué himself, when you talk about this stuff from a psychological viewpoint, I think that sometimes that can actually be more applicable and more easy to apply, because, again, like I've mentioned on this channel many times, like Neville and some of these spiritual teachers get very flowery with their language. And I've even heard recently that Neville actually had an interview. Somebody said this in a recent video I saw, where he's getting interviewed on TV, and he even admits in the interview, he's like, oh yeah, well, all that stuff is like, it's not meant to be taken literally. Like the stuff that he writes in his books and things, he's like, it's literally meant to like help you believe. And that actually makes a lot of sense. That checks out a lot for me, because when you really take this on from this practical viewpoint and use the language of psychology, it seems to be for certain people, probably myself and probably a lot of people that are kind of, logical, whatever, dwelling in, that's the trouble with it, is that I do think that there is truth. Like, I do think that there is this metaphysical aspect to all of this, but a lot of the times I think it can be easier to apply from this psychological aspect. So that's why I wanted to cover this today. Also, as just to reiterate and kind of drive this point home, that this stuff really works. This stuff really generates results. This guy would not have been, if this didn't work, and he put all this into this book and made the effort to write this book about this, after he's been using it to train these special operatives and things like this, it's super valid, guys. This is literally what they're doing when they're training these high level operatives in the military. And I'm sure that, whatever's written in this book is not even, I'm sure that like the trainings that they actually give them is even more dialed in. But just for us to get a glimpse into the type of ideas that they train their operatives with. I think that this is cool. It would be interesting to even get more into it and see, like, I'd love to know like the specific trainings that they undergo, but you know, it's probably hard to access that type of information. But with that being said, guys, much love as always. Drop this video with a like, hit me with a subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down on this below, and I will see you guys in the next video.